be working on McCall's 7604, and this pattern has recently been reissued, and the new pattern number is McCall's 8066. And so for this skirt, I'm going to be sewing view C, and this is the version with 3 tiers. And I'm going to be making a size medium, and for this pattern you're going to need about 2 3/8 yards of fabric in total. So make sure you check for your size how much fabric you need, because this pattern does require quite a bit of fabric, and it's pretty accurate as far as the amount of fabric that you need. So for this dress, I'm going to be doing the 3 tiers, and for the middle tier, I'm using the same fabric, but for the middle tier, I'm going to be using the opposite side of my fabric for the middle tier. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. So for the pattern, you need to cut out front piece number 1, and you need to cut out 2 of those on the fold, and make sure you mark your notches here on the side as well as on the top. And you want to for this pattern, I'm 5'1", so I shorten mine on the lengthen and shorten line right here by folding it up and taping it again. I'll cut off about 1 inch here on the fold on the shorten and lengthen line. So that's what I did for this piece. And also make sure you mark you make a mark here for the where the circle is. So mark with chalk your front circle piece. Then you want to cut out piece number 2, the front waistband, and you want to cut out 1 of fabric and 1 of interfacing. I accidentally cut my interfacing on the fold, but you only need 1 piece of interfacing and 1 piece of fabric for piece number 2. And this is the front waistband piece, and I added 1 inch on both sides to accommodate for my waist. And but make sure you cut out your notches on the interfacing and in your main fabric. So again, you need 1 piece of fabric and 1 piece of interfacing, and this is cut on the grain line instead of on the fold, so you line it up with your selvage to cut it out on the grain line. And also make sure you mark the center front as well as the fold line right here. So that's what you need for piece number 2. Then you want to cut out piece number 3, and make sure you need to cut 1 of those on the fold here on the fold line. Make sure you cut that on the fold, and then make sure you mark your notches, and then you mark your fold line as well. And for the back piece, I added 1 inch the same way I did for the front piece for the waistband. So that's piece number 3, the back waistband. Now next you need to cut out piece number 7, and that's the middle tier, and you want to cut out 3 of these pieces, 1 2 3 here on the fold, and make sure you mark your notch here. And make sure when you cut into your notches, only snip a little bit, or you can also mark it with chalk or cut them outwards. But if you snip into your notches, make sure you don't go more than 5/8 inch, because when you go to sew it together, it'll leave a little hole. So you just need to cut out a tiny bit for all of your notches. And so for the middle tier, again, you need to cut out 3 of these pieces on the fold. And then next, you want to cut out piece number 6, which is the lower tier, and you need to cut out 4 of those on the fold. So 1 2 3 4 of those pieces are cut out on the fold, and make sure you show your notches, snip into your notches here. Okay, so that's everything that you need for the pattern to sew up this skirt according to the pattern piece, according to the pattern directions. But I'm going to change it up and add pockets. And so what I did was I cut out 4 pocket pieces using one of my favorite sewing pattern, favorite pocket pattern pieces. So I'm using McCall's 7906. So I took the pocket piece out of this pattern, and I'm going to apply it to this skirt. So what I did was cut out 4 pieces. So you need 4 pocket pieces from your favorite pocket piece pattern in your stash. And if you don't have one, I'll leave links in the description box so you can download and print one out for your use to add to your pattern. So the first thing we're going to do is fuse the interfacing to the wrong side of the fabric. So make sure you have the wrong side of the fabric facing up and the glue side of the interfacing on the fabric, and make sure everything is lined up as well as you can. And then you're going to use press the interfacing using a pressing cloth to fuse the interfacing to the fabric. So that's what we're going to do first. So now we're still working on piece number 2, but now we've interfaced the front waistband, piece number 2, and on the unnotched side, so this is the notch side right here, we marked our notches right here. So on the unnotched side, you're going to fold it down 5/8, and I'm going to fold it down 5/8, so you can use your seam gauge or whatever measuring tool that you have to measure your 5/8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5/8. So it's just one more dot over the 1/2 inch. So you're going to measure that down 5/8, and then you're going to press it, and then we'll come back, and then we're going to trim it down to 3/8. Now we have put the interfacing on. We pressed this down 5/8, and we trimmed it down to 3/8. So we're done with piece number 2 for now. Next, we're going to take piece number 1, which is the front and back for all the views, and we're going to baste these together. We're going to make some gathering stitches. So the directions tell you to sew 2 straight lines on your basting stitch, which is the longest stitch on your machine, but we're going to do it a little bit differently. We're going to use yarn to gather it so that they'll be easier to take out. And what we're going to do is we're going to serge or finish off the top right here for both pieces, and then we're going to gather the top edge, and we're going to do it with yarn instead of basting stitches so that it'll be easier to take out and you have less chance of it breaking. So basically, we're going to do a zigzag stitch over some yarn, and then we're going to use that for our gathering, and we're going to do that for the front and the back after we finish the top part. So if you don't have a serger, you're going to zigzag the top edge, or you're going to overcast it. Use your overcast stitch on your sewing machine with your overcast foot to finish off the top. All right. Okay, so now we're going to zigzag it over the yarn and have this clear foot, and it has a little marking in the middle to show you where the center is. So I try to keep the yarn in the center of the presser foot, and again, it's on the longest stitch and the widest width, and you just go over and not hit the yarn. On zigzag. Okay, so now we've gathered our stitches using the yarn, and I went on ahead and I serged all the way around the side seams as well, and the bottom hem. So I've done that for the front and the back pieces, and so now we're going to add our waistband. And so for the waistband, and when you serge it, you can take out a stitch and so that you don't catch your yarn on the serging. So that's what I did. And so now we're going to apply our front waistband. So you're going to turn it over to the right side, and then you're going to match up. You're going to match up your center and your notches with the center and the notches here. Okay, so this is how it should look, and you want to make sure all of your gathers are facing up and none of them are like falling down. If they are, just readjust it again. And so this is how it should look. You should have this folded edge up, and it's on the right sides are facing with your notch edge matched up. So this is how it should look, and then we're going to go to the machine and sew that down at 5/8 inch. And then for the back, you're going to take your back waistband and do pretty much the same thing, except you're going to take the back waistband and fold it in half, matching your notches, and then you're going to pin, matching your notches here. Okay, and so what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and sew that down at 5/8, and that's it. And I also finish off the edges of the waistband as well, so that you don't have to finish it off later. So we're going to go ahead and sew this at 5/8 and sew the front waistband down also at 5/8. Okay, so now we've completed stitching on our waistbands, and so now we can remove the yarn. And so there you go. Okay, so the next step is to do the waistband. So what I do is I take the waistband and I put it to my back, and that's how I measure the length of it. You can use the elastic guide that comes with the pattern if you want, but I never do. I just take the amount of the waistband, I take the elastic and put it around me where it's supposed to go, and then you subtract 2 inches. So now you have your waistband measurement. So you just wrapped around your waist, and then you took 2 inches off of that. And now we're gonna guide the waistband through the hole here for the back. Okay, so we're gonna guide it through. So you get a big safety pin, you put it on the edge of your elastic, and you're gonna just guide that through. It's available. This is called the Nancy Zeman clip and glide bodkin, and what you do is you clip it here on the edge of your elastic and you guide it through that way. I couldn't find it for a minute, but have it now, and I prefer using this because it's faster. Okay, so I'm gonna serge all the way around on both sides and come back. Okay, so now we're moved on to the pockets. So first, when I make pockets, I like to interface the seam where the pockets are going to be sewn on the front piece. So that's what I do. I took a thin piece of interfacing. I use this Sew Keys stay tape, and I just cut it in half. I have the 1 1/4 inch knit stay tape, but it works fine on wovens as well. But if you don't have this, you can use your regular interfacing and just cut about a 5/8 inch strip and put that on the wrong side of the front piece and just press that down. And then you're gonna put your pockets on. You're gonna line up your pockets from the bottom. So that's what I did. I lined them up from the bottom and pinned it down on the front as well as on the back. So I did the same thing on the back, and then we're gonna sew that down at 3/8 inch. Okay, so now we're gonna stitch the front to the back and go around the pockets and come back down. So what I did was I pinned the front to the back and pinned the pockets all the way around, and then I marked 5/8 inch here and here so that we can keep it for the pocket opening. So we're going to sew from here, which is basically where the fold line is, right here on the front, because later we're going to slip stitch this part down. But we're going to sew from here down here. I marked the 5/8 inch. I used my little 5/8 inch ruler, and then you you stop here, you pivot, and then you're going to come down here, come all the way around here, come all the way up to the next dot, and then you're going to pivot and come straight down. So that's how we're going to sew up the pockets, and we're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. So I marked the 5/8 inch here. Going to start here, come down, go around, go all the way back around, pivot, and come back down. So that's what we're going to do to attach the pockets and attach our front and back together. Okay, so now we're going to sew our pockets and the sides. So we're going to start at where the back hits the fold line of the front, and we're going to back stitch at the beginning. And we're sewing this at 5/8 inch seam allowance. We're going to get to our dot, and that's where we pivot. So you keep your needle down, and then you lift your presser foot, and then you turn your fabric, making sure it's still at 5/8. You lower your foot, and you keep going around. And when you get to the 5/8 mark on your presser, on your guide here, that's when you're going to pivot again. Okay, I'm at 5/8, so I'm going to lift the presser foot, pivot, and we're going to go around. Trying to keep all your seams going in the same direction toward the pocket. And get into our second dot. And we're gonna lift the presser foot, pivot, and we're just gonna sew straight down, back stitch. And cut your threads. Way. And so what you're going to do is you're going to line your edge stitch foot or your blind hem foot up in the crease. So you're going to line up your foot in the crease. You're going to move your needle over about 3 ticks, and then you're going to just stitch down and kind of pull the seam as you're sewing so that it'll stay on that side. And this helps the pocket stay in and not flop out. Okay, now, so we have our pockets all sewn together, and when you turn it right side out, and you push your pockets in. You now have pockets, yay! Okay, so like I was saying, you're gonna pin on this side, and then you're also gonna pin it down on this side, covering up the elastic part on the back piece, and then you're gonna also pin over this seam right here. And you're gonna pin all the way down, and we're gonna slip stitch this edge and then slip stitch all the way down here. If you want, you can do the stitch in a ditch by you can use something like stay tape or double-sided tape. What do you call it? You can use double-sided fabric tape and tape it down, and then stitch in a ditch in between this fold on the other side. But I prefer to slip stitch my waistband, so that's what I'm. Okay, in order to slip stitch your waistband, you're going to thread your needle, and you make a knot at the end, and then you're going to put your needle in your main fabric, well, in the waistband part. You make a tiny little, go in real close, well, just a tiny bit. So you're gonna go through, and then you're just gonna catch a tiny bit of the main garment fabric, like that. Okay, and you're going to continue doing that. So you go in the little fold here, and you catch up a tiny bit. Okay, so you just do that all the way down. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the tiers. Now I'm going to be working on the middle tier first, and I'm making this lighter side my right side. So I'm going to pin them right sides together. So you can, and there are 3 pieces for the middle tier. And so you're going to pin these together. You're going to pin your notches. And then pin your corners. So after you have everything pinned, you should have a big old, basically a big old circle. And you're gonna just sew down at 5/8, 5/8, and then 5/8 on all 3 sides. Missed the corner right here. And then you're gonna serge all of your edges. You're gonna serge your side seams, your all your seams, and then you're gonna serge the top and the bottom to finish off your edges. If you don't have a serger, you zigzag or overcast all of those edges. And you're gonna do this for the middle tier, and then also you're gonna do the same thing for the lower tier. So you could just might as well do all of that at one time. Okay, so now that we've put in our yarn for the middle tier as well as the lower tier for our gathering, now we're ready to go ahead and put the two tiers together. So you're going to take your middle tier, and this is on the directions, it's about at step number 25. No, 26. So this is the point where you're going to quarter your different sections. So according to the directions, you're going to, in order to quarter it, you're going to take one end on the non-gathered side. This is the gathered side, this is the non-gathered side, and you're going to take one seam, and you're going to decide to make that your main seam that you're going to base off the quartering. So you take one seam, and then you're going to widen it out as far as you can to even it out. So you're going to make it even on both sides, and then you're going to pop a pin in the opposite sides to show the exact opposite of the seam that you pinned. Okay, so that's one part quartered. Okay, and then after you do that, you're going to match those two pins together. So you're going to do it the opposite way. So you're going to take this pin with the pin on the seam, match those, and then pull it out, and then the opposite seam is where you're going to put your next part of the quarter. So that's your next part of the quarter on this side. And then the next part of the quarter is going to be on the other end, is going to be your last quarter. So that's how you quarter here. And then for the lower tier, you're going to mark, and this is one of the parts of the directions that's not clearly explained in the directions, but it is shown in the picture. So it just tells you to pin the lower tier to the lower edge of the middle tier, right sides together, matching markings. So what you're going to do, but it doesn't tell you where to put it from the lower tier. It tells you how to mark the middle tier, but not where to mark the lower tier. So in the picture, you can tell that they use the middle section of each part of the tier, and they lined up that right in the middle of where you marked it in section 26. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take the middle section of each section of the lower tier and line it up with the pin markings that we just made in step 26. So, and this time we're marking the gathered side. So you have one tier right here. It goes here. And where you folded it when you cut it out, that is the middle part. So you know that's the middle. So you mark a pin there. And then you do that for every section. You're going to mark a pin at the center fold for the lower tier for each section. Because remember, you had 4 sections for the lower tier. Okay, so now you have that. Now we're going to match it up to the bottom, right sides together. So let me move this to the right side. My right side is a little opposite because I'm using the back of the fabric for my middle tier. Okay, so this is the right side, and we're going to mark the quarters that we just made up with the middle of each gathered section for the lower tier. So you're going to take your yarn. Where is the beginning? Okay, so you're going to take your yarn and start to gather it up. And make your gathers as even as you can. Okay, so now that you have this pinned, you want to make sure the outside of, so the middle tier, that edge is flat. Okay, while the inside is, which is the lower tier, is the gathered part. So you want to make sure that it's as flat as you can have it, because you don't want gathers on this side. The gathers are on that side. Okay, and so now you're going to take your and you have to be a little patient to get it all even and adjust and readjust to get all of your gathers nice and even and all the way around. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to sew this around at 5/8, and then we're going to come back and attach these two tiers to the front and back. Okay, so we finished our front and back. And what I did was I clipped a little bit into the bottom of the pocket right here, and I pinned it up so when we're ready to add the tiers on the bottom, the pocket won't get in the way. So I cut two but not through to the dot that we had marked here on the bottom, and then pinned it down so that the pockets will be out of the way when we're ready to sew them to the lower tiers. Okay, so now we've added our bottom tier to the middle tier, so it looks good. So now what we have to do is add the middle tier to the front and back. So right sides together, you're gonna put one seam to the center back. And here's the center back. So one seam is going to be on the center back, right sides together. So make sure you got the right side. And then the other two seams for the middle tier are going to go at your notches. So these are the notches. I put some pins so you can see it better. So you're going to take your other two seams, right sides together. So here's the first seam. Going to match that up with the front notch or the dot. And then you're going to take your other seam and match that up with the other dot. Okay, and then, so make sure all of that is kind of stuffed in. Okay, and then you're going to gather, you're going to pull your gathers like you did before for the middle tier to adjust between those seams, between those. So you're going to adjust it here and pin everything here, adjust it all the way around. Okay, and then sew that around at 5/8. So, and then we'll come back and we'll have. So now that we've attached the middle and lower tier to the front and back, we're done with our skirt for the most part. The only thing left to do is remove all of your yarn from the inside. So take out all the yarn, and you can take out all the basting stitches if you want. If they're not showing, you don't really have to take them out, but if any of them are showing through on the right side, make sure you at least take those out. But you're going to go ahead and remove your yarn, remove your basting stitches if you want, and then you're going to hem it. So per the directions, you're just they want you to turn it over twice, but since we serged it, you only have to hem it up, press it up to 5/8. well, try it on to make sure it's at the length that you want at this point. That's why I never hem my things, like the directions want you to hem the lower tier before you attach it to the middle tier, but I never do that because I need to know the length because I'm short. So I just like to double check. But anyway, the directions tell you to turn it over twice at 5/8 inch. And you can do that, and then you'll just hem that all the way around using your edge stitch foot as a guide. Or you can just hem it up once if you serged it at 5/8 inch. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a 3-thread over 3-thread stitch narrow hem on my serger, and I'll show you how I do that in a minute. But that's what I'm going to do to finish my hem, and that's one of the hems that I really like on really wide fabrics like this, and it's nice and flowy, and I think it'll give it a nice edge. So I'm basically going to be taking off my serging. But the serging does help you when you want, if you do want to turn it over twice, it helps you, gives you something to anchor it to. Or even if you just want to do it once, you don't have to turn it over twice because it's already serged. So I'm going to show you how I do that, and then after you do the hem, you're done with. Okay, so now we're going to hem the bottom hem of the skirt. And for my machine, I have a Baby Lock Imagine. For the we're doing the 3-thread overlock narrow hem. So check your own manual to see how to do this. But on my machine, you need to have only your right needle threaded. Your length should be 0.75 to 1.5, and I put mine on 1. And then width should be 3.0, and the stitch selector over here should be on C. So make sure you just only have your right needle threaded, and you do some test stitches to make sure everything is the way you want it. I already did that. So I did some test stitches right here, just right here, because that's the way I want it to end. So I'll do some test stitches on some scrap fabric to make sure it's going to come out right. And so now what we're going to do is just go ahead and hem it with that, because it's a nice thinner serged hem. So I'm just going to go over where I serged it before and just serge that off. And because I tried it on and I like the length and I don't want to shorten it anymore. So this is how we're going to do it. So lift up your presser foot, strap it, and then you just... Okay, so now we have our hem, our rolled hem, and it looks so nice. And so with the ends, you're just gonna take a wide needle and just kind of thread it through this little seam over here so they won't be hanging off. Or you can just cut it and use some what do you call it, this some of this fray check. You can just clip it and use fray check if you want to do. That's another option too. So anyway, it's been fun sewing this up with you, and I will show some pics at the end of me wearing it. Take care. Bye. Happy sewing.